Welcome to the Valmika Property Investing Podcast, where I, your host, share the key to success in the Australian property investing market. I'm the founder of Valmika Buyers Agency. You can find us at valmikaproperty.com. The contents of this podcast are the personal opinion of your host and are intended for entertainment purposes only. Any financial advice must be obtained from your trusted financial advisor or a qualified professional. On this week's episode, titled Property Due Diligence, Lessons from Real Life Cases, I'm going to discuss something that is really important in your property journey and your property investment journey. I'm going to go through the various stages of property due diligence. This is crucial because this can actually make or break your property investment. If the due diligence process is not done properly, you can make big mistakes and costly mistakes because purchasing a property is one of the biggest investments you can make in one's lifetime. So the topics of discussion under this topic will be market research and analysis. That forms the first part of your due diligence. We'll then move on to discussing the physical due diligence aspect. Then this will lead to the financial due diligence. And lastly, we'll discuss legal due diligence. So let's get straight into it. Market research and analysis is a very important and it's a core component of your due diligence. In this section of your due diligence, you're going to need to do a thorough analysis of where the market is, how it's priced. And to do that, you're going to have to get access to the entire market. So if you are searching just on domain and real estate, that's just a component of what's on the market. It's not the entire market. And especially in the current conditions where there are distressed sellers out there, they can't afford to put it on market because to put it on market, they have to pay for the advertising through the agents. So what they do is they put it off market. So to get a good understanding of where the market is priced and what is in the market, you need to get access to what's not only on the market, but what's off market, what's pre-market, and what's post-market discounted properties too. Then once you've got access to this, you've got an entire understanding of where the market is. And this is important because you need to know what the competition is out there in terms of what's available in terms of supply. You need to understand from this data where market is valued, where your assets are valued at. And if you don't get a holistic picture, you're going to be making uninformed decisions as to where the market's valued at or where the current property that you're looking at is valued at. But it goes deeper than this. So what we do is we go from the root, and that is understanding the global and country economics and how they influence the socioeconomic factors of the population. So you'll find that different suburbs have different socioeconomic factors and different regions have different socioeconomic factors. What do I mean by this? So currently, China is going through a recession. This has been led by an over-debted property market and a lack of confidence because of large development companies going bankrupt. And it's rippled through to the rest of the economy because the property sector is such a large component of the Chinese GDP. As a result, China is in a slowdown. So what this would mean is that there will be a slowdown for raw materials. And this would affect Australia very negatively because Australia is the mining export hub basically for China. So understanding this as an example, if there's a socioeconomic area that is reliant, so the people that live in those areas are reliant on the mining economy, and the mining economy is slowing down, then the suburbs will slow down. So it's important to understand that in part of your due diligence. So it's taking a holistic um, approach. This topic is large, and I can go on and on about it. So it's probably worthwhile, if you're interested, leave a comment in the podcast that you are listening to this, and I can actually do a whole new episode on this. So market research analysis also goes into understanding the correlation dynamics between suburbs. So if one suburb is starting to get an uplift in activity and has got a positive correlation to another suburb in a different region because of socioeconomic factors, for example, then you can expect that other suburb to get an economic uplift as well. And it'd be worthwhile to take the opportunity of getting into that area because you can see there's an uplift in another suburb. And we go even deeper than that. We look at the correlation between streets in the same suburbs. So if one street is starting to get an uplift, we know that there's a correlation between another street in a suburb and correlations in different suburbs. So if you've got a street in a certain area getting an uplift in property value or decrease in property value, then it's got a positive correlation to the tune of, say, 90% with another street in a different suburb, then you can expect the same thing to apply there. So getting an understanding of the entire market in that sense is very crucial. And it gives you a strong factual basis when purchasing your property, because you'll have confidence in knowing where the market is. It'll give you a solid foundation to negotiate off of as well. So this part of your due diligence process is very, very important. The next level of due diligence I want to speak about is the physical due diligence. So once you've located a property that you like, it's important to go and view it, or get a buyer's agent or someone you trust to go and view it for you. And what we do is when we go and look at property, for example, is we look out for stuff like water damage. So we look at the roof and see if there's been any patch-up jobs, for example, of any major roof leaks, because these can get pretty expensive. We'll also look out for things like damp and mold. So that can not only be very unhealthy for the family living in that property, but also can become very costly. And the way to see that is if the property is actually cut into a mountain, for example, and the earth is up against the property, there's a good chance that there'll be water seepage going to the house. So those are very important things to look out for. And it'll be important to determine the cost of repairing that so you can negotiate that into the price of the property if you're still willing to acquire it. It's advisable and it's very important not to skip out the next step in your physical due diligence, and that is getting a thorough building and pest inspection report done by a qualified professional. It is worth the cost of doing this because the property is such a big investment. A couple of $100 of getting a thorough building and pest inspection report is well worth it, because it could save you thousands and thousands of dollars in the future. The next level of due diligence is the financial level of due diligence. So here it's very important to understand what the property is going to cost you, because there are hidden costs in the property. So I'll give you an example. Not only are you purchasing the property for what the purchase price is, but there's stuff like stamp duty, there's strata cost, there's maintenance costs that you're going to have to factor into the property, whether it's a freestanding property or if it's a strata. You also need to factor in a period of vacancy, for example, if it's a investment property. You need to make sure that you can afford it. Other things to consider is you need to factor in interest rate movements. What happens if interest rates go up by a certain level? What are the probabilities of them going up by a certain level, and how much will it cost you when you'll be able to afford it? Would it be important to fix your loan? Are you at the top of the interest rate cycle or the bottom? If you're at the bottom, maybe it's important to fix. If you're at the top, it's important maybe to leave it floating. You need to understand these things. And of course, there's also going to be bond costs and then conveyancing costs that you'll need to take into account. and it's important to get a holistic view of where you stand. This has also got to do, the financial due diligence component will have to do with what your strategy is for the property. So if you want to do a renovation, you need to make sure that you're not buying the most expensive property in the neighborhood, because if you still need to renovate it, then you might be overcapitalizing. So it's important to understand that dynamic in the property, take into account the repair costs, and these can be a part of a negotiation of trying to get the price of the property down. The next level of due diligence is your legal due diligence, and this one is very, very important as well. So I had a recent purchase that we acquired for one of our clients, and small things that you wouldn't think of came up, and I'll give you an example. So in the sale and purchase agreement, there was a clause whereby the seller required the buyer to pay out the remaining portion of the land tax. And the land tax can be, depending on the state, can be a very expensive amount as well. And it can be a costly amount. So we picked it up, and that formed part of the negotiation to remove that from the contract. Other things that will be important. So if you're purchasing a property, an investment property, and you particularly want to take advantage of short-term rentals, and then in the contract there's the strata prohibits you from doing short-term rentals like Airbnb, that could materially affect the decision to purchase the property. Other things that are very important in your legal due diligence is reviewing your strata reports. So we picked up in our recent acquisition that there was a concrete cancer problem, and unless you went through the strata, you would have never known. And concrete cancer can be a very expensive process to rectify, requiring special levies on your strata, and that we were able to negotiate into the price, because the purchaser still wanted to acquire the property, but we managed to negotiate the price of the property down. I hope this gave you some value and insight into how important due diligence is. It's obviously very worthwhile to get professionals to do components of these for you. For example, with the legal side of things, get a property lawyer, and that also does the conveyancing. We like to group the two together in our service. Right, so moving on to the auction clearance results for the weekend of the 1st of October 2023. New South Wales clearing at 69.9%, with Sydney at 71.7%. So still a good clearance rate in New South Wales. Victoria, a 65.4% clearance rate, with Melbourne clearing at 66%. Western Australia, a 40% clearance rate, with Perth at 50%. Obviously, Western Australia has got a different dynamic when it comes to auctions. They're not as popular as some of the other states, so it's not an accurate reflection of the health of the property sector there. So it's worthwhile to keep that in mind. South Australia clearing at 80%, still very strong clearance rate, with Adelaide at 79.3%. And Queensland, 58.2% clearance rate, with Brisbane clearing at 70%. Thank you for tuning into this week's podcast. I hope you found it valuable. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Valmika Property Investing Podcast. I hope you found our discussion insightful and empowering. If you're interested in finding out more about our services at Valmika Buyers Agency, visit our website at valmikaproperty.com. There you'll discover how we can assist you in making informed decisions and achieving your property goals. See you on the next episode.